I don't understand what's going on in America. And again, if you're feeling like, what the hell is the point of being a billionaire if you're going to? I mean, like, as much as Donald Trump talks about the Justice Department out to get him and witch hunt, here's a real witch hunt. The real witch hunt is Ben Affleck in an Afro wig portraying you in a major movie that is constantly advertised during the Final Four. I would take a New York indictment over this 9, 10 times out of 10. Every day of the week is twice on Sunday. If my choices were go to prison for a couple of years over sex with a porn star or having Ben Affleck in a curly wig, like how you let this happen if you're Phil Knight, how you actively signed up for this if you're Phil Knight, I have no idea. Like I assume it's just that Affleck and Damon ambushed him with it. Like he had no idea. He signed off, and then he got to actually see what he's being made to look like. Like Phil Knight. I mean, hey, look, we all know you have spent your life torturing children in your Chinese factory. And that's going to go down as a much more positive note than this stupid fucking movie, right? I would much rather have them had left Ben Affleck out and made a movie about what goes on in your Chinese factory than have Ben Affleck make you look like this.
The time.
Wake up with Defo, joined by Lubie. Welcome to the Defo Show.
I guess we have to answer the question right away. Does that come under the heading of forced streaming and/or / radio laughter when somebody mentions torturing children in Chinese factories? And our response, Lubie, is,
That made me laugh.
what do you think?
Maybe a sicko, but he made me genuinely laugh.
Yeah, I mean, the approach naturally was what we were laughing at, much more so than the actual event of torturing children in Chinese factories, which would not normally, be appropriately drawing a response of. Anyway, good morning, everybody, on a Peel Yourself Off the Mat Monday. I hope everybody's okay out there. How you feeling, Mike Lubie Lubitz? I'm Jeff DeForest, and it's great to be with you on this edition of the Defo Show. How was your weekend, Lubie? We had pretty amazing weather, considering that the forecast was for weather Armageddon once again. I tell you, I'd love to book the weather people's action, wouldn't you? I mean, how dead wrong? How can you be wrong when the weather is the same essentially in this city every day? All right, it's like predicting the weather in Las Vegas. I mean, there are only a few times during the year. Okay, yeah, there's going to be some wind, man. Watch out, cover your eyes, dust storms. But for the most part, sunny and mild. I tell you what, we're going to have a temperature right around the mid-80s, and then it's going to be that way again tomorrow and the day after. Pretty easy job, right? How could you so frequently get it wrong? It's incredible. But, the weather was supposed to be a washout city. I guess late yesterday it kind of became that. But
over here, it rained. Saturday, the weather was spectacular.
Yeah.
Sunday, rained the entire day over here.
Yes, and I keep justifying my, Saturday trips to the track by saying, well, it's going to rain anyway. Because I've already been at the racetrack all day Friday, which I took a bit of a beating. Do I look like I needed a cut, man? Yeah, after Friday, and then went right back Saturday and did more of the same. I'm on a streak there where I just can't get out of my own way. I'm right in the ballpark, like always. In gambling, you're always right in the ballpark, are you not? Yeah, again, if I had just used the 2. It's that kind of thing. A lot of, whining and fetching goes on as a result of being a degenerate gambler, which you were rewarded richly, I think, if you backed John Rahm, the favorite, in the Masters tournament. As, I don't know. I mean, people exaggerate after they win. Yeah, I had a big score. I won 11,000. You're like, yeah, sure. So, meanwhile, the guy might have won a dime legitimately. How many of you people out there, degenerates, have been, just listening to some guy BS about some big score he made? Like, you care, right? I don't want to hear that some guy won $240,000 when I'm stuck 300, and I'm sitting there just worried that somebody's going to poach my racing form or walk off with my cell phone. Do you trust leaving your cell phone in certain bars, Lubie? No? I mean, do you always take it with you, like even if you're going to take a leak? Yeah?
100%. People do it, and usually they're fine because everyone has a phone now. So, like, why would you want to take someone's phone? But, yeah, I don't trust it. No way.
I guess you can, sell the phone carcass or whatever it would be for, if it costs you a dime, what can you get for it? $100 there on the black market, right? And the next thing you know, your phone is coming to you from Jalisco, Mexico, Culiacan, California. Yeah, I mean, unbelievable. Yeah, it's gone. I leave mine there, and people are always warning me. I always suspect the people that are warning me are the people that are more likely to steal the phone, right? Because why would it occur to them in the first place? Maybe I'm too trusting at this stage. Anyway, you could have trusted John Rahm to be among the leaders. He's already won 3 tournaments this year and been a prominent factor for the last several seasons. Number 1 in the world. John Rahm to win the Masters, you would say. I mean, going against a giant field, odds usually on a short priced favorite in golf, you're getting like 5, 6 to 1. You followed this a little bit, Louis, correct?
I didn't get to watch a lot of it, but I was keeping track of the weekend's events. It was fucking weird.
Well, and it was great in some ways. For me, it was much better because I like when they show the thing in the morning. So, on Saturday, they naturally got jammed up because I guess it was the second round. Second round got suspended, right, on Friday. The players that were out there late in the afternoon, they didn't finish their round. So they had to come back on Saturday morning and finish the second round and then try to get in whatever they could of the third round. And I was surprised. I don't know. I mean, it looks different on TV. You know how sometimes, you'll be watching a baseball game and you can't see any rain and you're wondering why everybody's scattering. And then they show you the flag by the lights and you see the rain is just pelting this place. It's like hail is falling. And you're thinking, how the hell were they out there in the first place? I mean, what was Yum thinking? Oh, yeah, let's just play through this. Right? And you got a twister going through like City Field and just going, the bases are flying around like it was a scene in Poltergeist. And you're, yeah, okay, yeah, why don't we just keep playing? If you're Lee Wire back there behind the plate. But it looked atrocious on TV, Lubie, what was going on. I mean, these guys were getting drenched. And they're playing with the little umbrella and the whole thing. And I'm thinking, wow, they're really desperate to squeeze this in. I guess they ended up doing a good job because the fourth round was contested under what you would have to say was Augusta National Chamber of Commerce type of weather. No, it looked beautiful out there. They must have had to pipe in the bird noises this time. Or did they stop doing that? I don't know. I didn't really notice on the audio. Did you? I probably should have been paying more attention, to some of the important things about the tournament. Besides the fact that, and I mentioned this on Defo on 5, why is it that I have this? I mean, the PGA has always been a very overly sanctimonious, pretentious group, has it not, Mike Lubitz? Where, you're really thinking this is the life of the privileged. You don't see a lot of guys like Lee Trevino or some of these other players. I guess there probably are a handful of others that came from dire poverty and made it on the PGA Tour. Would you say that that's a relatively uncommon story? You don't see too many of those, do you? Where the guy was it's not like you're going to get the Manny Pacquiao story where he was selling bananas or whatever on the street there, and living on the streets, and eventually became one of the richest guys and a politician in his country of the Philippines. Right? And look, the guy took a beating many times to get to that position. So all the respect in the world. But yeah, you're thinking it's more a thing of privilege, are you not? The people on the PGA Tour. So I don't know why I would expect any different of the Live Tour defectors. And, we have to, ask ourselves deep down inside. I know our friend Joe Casal said that he was offered a job by Greg Norman. I guess he had been like an agent for some golfers in the past. So he was familiar with Norman, and Norman asked him to take some job with the Live Tour as like a publicist or a marketing guy. And he turned it down. Now, somebody comes to me at this stage, it's nearing 72, and says, "Hey, Deef, I got a lot of cash for you." Now, and there is a parallel there to the old age because most of the guys that took the Live Tour money, most of them, in the beginning especially, were guys that were pretty much finished anyway, right?
Yes, except for Cam Smith. They're all been the old, like even Kepka. That's the thing. Kepka's not old.
Kepka was, not sure he was ever going to be good again, right?
He wasn't doing shit when he
Yeah.
went. That's why he went. He's like, all right, they're going to pay me $250 million to suck. Okay.
His number supposedly hanging at 100 million. Now, the other thing you're looking at, he in the past had been such a fiery competitor that the story went that after I guess he blew a chance to win the Masters or had some bad round and tried to bust with his fist the back window of the car that they had given him, the courtesy car out. I mean, think about that, Louie. You're a golfer, and you're going to go ahead and throw your fist through like thick, bulletproof glass window, as if you were demanding service at a check cashing store or something. I mean, what the hell was this guy thinking? And but he was so upset with whatever happened. I mean, he like missed a putt or something, and that was his reaction. And yet yesterday, with his 100 million already pocketed in Saudi blood money, did I say that? I know.
Yeah,
See,
you
I
said
shouldn't
that.
be so judgmental about this.
You said that. We're like, well. Then you're like, fuck it.
Right? Hey, Johnny, nice shot. Right? I mean, what is that? He's sitting there eating a banana with the guy. I mean, this was a guy that would have hit him in the head with a 3-iron in the past.
Look,
John Rahm, as they're competing, they're like 2 shots apart. What was that?
because you're getting into something, and I can't fight you. Like financially, I'm not destitute, but I'm not where I want to be. So if someone offered me just a few million,
Yeah.
it'd be really hard for me to be like, listen, Jose or Juan or whatever the hell, Abdul, listen, I can't do that.
Yeah.
I have too much principles, like
I much prefer my impoverished level right now
stressing out
to
about
the easy bag of money that you're about to hand me for literally doing nothing by comparison to what I was doing.
Yeah,
3-round tournaments, 14 times a year. And, but I mean, there's all kinds of fugazi stories now about the numerology with this. But essentially, you can't imagine that any of these guys, agents or representatives or lawyers, would have let them sign on for this unless they were getting the predominant amount of the cash that's being reported. And you don't know if the reporting is accurate. But if you're Phil Mickelson at 50 something and they offer you $200 million guaranteed to walk away, well, what do you want to do? Play a couple of Champions Tour events? Hey, Fuzzy, how you doing? Like, yeah, oh yeah, you seen the grandkids? That's great. I mean, what's he going to do that for? Now, he had played like absolute shit on the Live Tour. He was one of the worst Live Tour players. In fact, you were thinking he's more of a distraction and a detraction from the Live Tour, that you have a washed-up Phil Mickelson, rolling around the course there as if he was Arnie Palmer, tooling around the Masters, when he was in his 80s. They don't make those guys play the whole round anymore, right? When Watson tees off with Big Jack, he's a little past his prime, you would have to say. Looks like the game has torn him up a little bit. And Gary Player, who's amazing, right? Gary Player
rocked.
is going to outlive the planet. I mean, he really is. There'll be no planet. There'll still be Gary Player and the Flying Palmetto. Those will be the 2 things that are left standing. Wow. I mean, the guy looks like he does. He looks like Jack LaLanne, man, on that old exercise show that he used to do. Or one of those guys that used to, wasn't it LaLanne that used to tie like 10 rowboats behind him?
Yes.
And then like swim the English Channel? Like one-handed. He didn't even use the other arm. He just was waving to the crowd with the other arm. Pretty incredible. Yeah, that's Gary Player, man. Amazing. He looks like he could roll around the course there, without needing any kind of wheelchair assistance, which can't be said for, well, even Tiger, right? I mean, wow, how crumbled and shot did Tiger Woods look? The worst thing that happened was he made the cut.
Yes,
because before he made the cut, he was just hanging in there, and then what? He had to come back out. How did that work? I'm a little, lost in my own recollection of exactly how that worked. It was the second round. What was suspended. So they had to finish the second round and start the third round, I guess, on Saturday morning when it was going to be pouring rain by 2:00 in the afternoon. And it was, the conditions had changed dramatically for the worse. And we're not conducive to a guy who's had a lot of surgeries and, problems with broken bones and dislocations. You know how it is. Well, you don't know this yet, do you, at 40? When does that kick in, the Mendoza line for men? Is that now? It's not in your 60s. I'm going to go back to the original Mendoza line for men was 54. That's when things start going south for us guys. Now, you could say that you could sustain, that level of debauchery into your 60s without feeling any pain. But then, I mean, and this happens it doesn't necessarily happen to me, but I'm sure it will eventually, where, people always say, oh, man, the cold weather, right? We only have 2 days of it a year here, if that. But, all of a sudden your knees are aching and your elbows are, or I guess rain impacts certain people this way. Is that also the case, Lubie?
Yeah.
Have you ever had these feelings where all of a sudden you can feel it because it feels like rain?
Yeah, the trick.
Right?
Me.
Sounds like a Johnny Cash
song.
song.
It's gonna rain. You know my
Right,
name.
and all of a sudden you're like Chester from Gunsmoke, man. You're just one leg is just waggling there, and dangling off in pain. You wish you could chop it off. That's what it looked like with Tiger, though. I mean, the weather turned very unfavorable for somebody that's had a lot of problems physically. And I don't know that was singularly. I mean, it's probably a combination of things because he was walking very awkwardly anyway. So I mean, look, good that he's out there, right? Give him a little credit. I mean, if he hadn't had this last incident with the girlfriend, I would still believe that he had turned the corner and had an epiphany and just had become a much more well-rounded, nicer guy. But I guess what do you believe on that, Louis? Because he seems like a different person, and yet I don't know. He really looked. I mentioned this on the Defo on 5 thing. I mean, he looked like Muhammad Ali, holding his gloves up in the corner there as Larry Holmes was bombing away and begging the ref to stop the fight in their 1980 bout in Las Vegas when Ali fooled the world with a picture before the fight. They put a picture in a newspaper of an Ali that looked actually absolutely in shape after he'd been like a bloated shell of himself for like a couple of years at the end of his career. And then all of a sudden, he's taking his thyroid medication, and he looks like he's in great shape. And the odds favor Ali in this fight, 6-5, if you can imagine. If ever there was a chance to make a score, you had to run to Las Vegas, which I did with my friend, and every dime we could put together and put it all on Larry Holmes. And then you had to, is that like taking the Saudi blood money, though, Lubie? You had to watch one of your idols all time just take an unbelievably ugly beating, and you're yelling in the corner because you have money on it. Come on, Larry, knock him out. Money is at the root of all evil, especially when it comes to. Imagine that you're rooting for Ali to get. I mean, well, you were just screaming, "Step in and stop it, ref! It's a killing."
Right, you weren't saying that. You were saying knock his old ass out.
Nah, we didn't need that. That was the biggest gimme I've ever seen in my lifetime, right? And it's always good to be right in those situations where what would it's the same thing like these people that believed this year that Tiger Woods would win the tournament. Now the making the cut thing that was kind of interesting to follow. So there were a lot of sidebar stories to this, including what is now a live tour group that is basking in the glory of, you see, we are better than these clowns. Who you calling a clown? That was what Sergio said to Freddie Couples. Who you calling clown?
Yeah, they did. They between Mickelson and Koepka, and then you had Patrick Reed was around the top. They actually did way better than I thought they would. I didn't think they would.
Cam Smith, he wasn't totally out of it. He was like 2 under or something like that. I think. I don't know. He was doing all right. I mean, it was not like the PGA guys disgraced themselves. The tournament was laced with them, but there are only 18 live player tours in the tournament, and they obviously were all over the leaderboard there. Minus 36 won the pool, took down 6 times in the Masters golf pool. I don't know that I would have had all of those guys. I would have taken Rahm this time because I've taken other guys. I guess Scheffler is always the choice there. Scheffler and Rahm, but I thought Rahm would do well in this tournament. No, everybody seemed to think he was going to win it, and a lot of people cashed. I don't know that anybody got 10-1. If you did, God bless you. That happy Easter, because the odds seem to be a lot lower than that. Where are people getting these prices, right? How come I never get offered these kind of odds, Louis?
Yeah, well, was it you or Mayo texted like he got 10-1, and I was like, wasn't he the favorite? I know you get good odds in golf, but 10-1 for the.
I didn't think he was 10-1. I thought he was like maybe 7 and a hook was the highest I saw.
Oh, that's high.
That's still good though, right? I mean, if you like this guy to win the tournament, in there with a big shot, playing better than anybody else. He's the number 1 player in the world. Very, a serious competitor, and yet, has a side to him that's very likable, does he not, John Rahm? Which is, you might be thinking, oh, geez, here's, another guy that's going to be a real dickhead. He's not. And, comes across as a very humble, low-key, and very likable individual. So, yeah, John Rahm, congratulations. I'm screaming. I mentioned this earlier this morning on the Defo and 5. I'm screaming, you scab live tour scumbag. Every time this guy drew a club back, Brooks Koepka, who I used to like. I used to root for Koepka because the Polyman pointed this out to me, and I don't know that it was mentioned on the telecast. Did you catch Jim Nantz referencing anything along the lines of Koepka, without question, the best teeth in golf, which is saying a lot because, I mean, these guys all had good dental care throughout their lifetime. As we said, children of privilege for the most part. Would you agree with that Koepka has the best teeth in golf?
I mean, he has, I don't know, great, but they're very bright.
Giant teeth, man. It looks like Secretariat, shared the same dentist, doesn't it? Giant. He has the look, man, of a champion, does he not? I mean, you would have to say, as he's swashbuckling his way around there, you thought he was going to whip Rahm's ass. And that's when it got to me. I don't know. Maybe it was all of a sudden I had an epiphany and became a man of principle.
Oh, okay.
Because, look, if somebody came to me right now and said, hey, Deef, here's $2 million, just to, you're going to have to broadcast the Live Tour. And we want you to really pump up our players and talk a lot of nice things about Saudi Arabia and how much you enjoyed going over there to travel, because naturally when you came to visit, you didn't see any of the atrocities that are taking place.
Yeah, for sure.
When it came to, human rights. Right? They didn't show you any of those places.
I mean, we've had to be, or no one told us to, but we felt the need to be positive about the Marlins, even though they were trading away every star player they had.
Yeah.
So that was pushing it. I don't know if I've ever been like, Sharif,
well, this could be good for the team in the long run. Yeah.
Not a bad guy. Look, those people weren't behaving properly. What do you want them to do? You want them to let jerk?
You're saying we did a certain amount of shilling in our lifetime, which defied what normally would be considered logic. Looks like you froze on me here, Lubie. So anyway, we're going to come back. Brett Tessler, the agent of the Stars. We did have Odell Beckham signing with the Ravens on the football side, and still awaiting what's going to happen with all of these quarterbacks, right? Aaron Rodgers, still a Green Bay Packer. I don't even see anything about that story anymore. The New York Post is immersed in coverage of Yankees, Mets, who the Marlins managed to beat yesterday. And as Lubie was referencing, 4-6 to start the season? Is that where they're at? 4-6, I want to say. About what you would expect, right? Nice, solid 400 club. Although, the Braves are atop the division at 6-3, I think they are. And it might be one other game that was in there also. Lubie's rebooting, so I'll continue to just have this conversation going with you guys. But with zero expectations and the usual, problem that look, you just don't have enough firepower. This whole idea that you were going to nurture young starting pitching for years in the minors and that they were all going to come together about the same time. Never seems to work out. We've seen this theory applied in the past. It doesn't usually come to fruition. Whereas we were talking about Paul Wilson and Pulsifer and Isringhausen with the Mets many years ago. It can't miss, right? All of these guys were flamethrowers. But, unfortunately, weird shit happens along that kind of ride. And you end up, disappointing not only your fan base, but setting yourself back many years because you were counting on something that ultimately was a pipe dream. Now with the Marlins, I don't even know. Is that a pipe dream when they tell you constantly, oh, yeah, you know what, we're going to get some young players and develop them in the farm system? This was Jeter's plan. And we kind of, as fans, had no choice but to, sort of semi-buy into it and cross our fingers and hope that maybe Jeter was going to be right about this, that he wasn't in this just for, some kind of showcase or ego gratification, that he really, this serious-minded guy. The story was he was dedicating all kinds of time to this, that, he's there day and night, sleeping in the office. And I'm thinking, what he really needs to sleep on is a pile of cash, no? Is that not the only way to kind of turn your fortunes around in Major League Baseball? It seems to be, unless you're the Tampa Bay Rays, which continues to be one of the great sports phenomenons I know we had Billy Ball there with Billy Bean and the Oakland A's, and very appropriate that an organization like that was fighting every baseball demon that you could possibly go against in terms of market size, fan base, and all the other things. Financial wherewithal. Nobody coming to the games. The stadium it was supposedly a real armpit. And they prospered. They would make the postseason. They would flirt with it on the years that they didn't make it. They would constantly turn over players. Anybody that got good would be going packing to another team, and they managed to flourish, at that level for a long period of time. Not necessarily a championship level, but one that at least made it exciting to watch young guys play. If you're that much of a diehard fan, and then you get the Marlins, and well, we had some of that. Unfortunately, that ended up getting stripped away also. And then we had the evil Loria Sampson era, and there's been no recovery. That they seem to be in complete la la land. Showing some signs here and there, but once again, not having quite enough, to really get over the top. So 4-6, not necessarily something that what we didn't expect. As we continue here, and I'm hoping that Lubie comes back around so we could actually keep the show moving. I don't have my phone with me, so I don't know if he's trying to send any kind of a message. But we're hoping for the best here on the Defo show. And in the meantime, we will continue to entertain you. Really wild. The Masters turned out great. We have the basketball playoffs coming up. Hawks play the Heat. The Heat hosting the Atlanta Hawks. I want to say that whenever I've tuned into a Heat Hawks game so far this year, which has been infrequent and only in spots, it seemed like the Heat were more than capable of handling the Atlanta Hawks and sending them packing. Now, can anybody pop a game and come up with a win? If they do, then the Heat would still have a second chance to try and qualify as the 8th seed, which would match them in the first round against the Milwaukee Bucks. Also, I mean, I don't know which is more unfavorable, facing the Celtics or the Bucks in the first round. Now we've seen in the past where the Heat were capable of beating both of those teams. Right? They sent the Bucks packing that one year in the bubble, and the Bucks came back with some serious retribution. As wow, there he is! Oh, look at that, Mike Lubie Lubitz has appeared out of the distance. You all right, kid? What happened there? I've been babbling here for a while about the Marlins.
I give you credit for talking that entire time. I'm like, fuck, Defo won't look at his phone. So I can't.
I don't have my phone. I happen to leave it in this basket that's away from the set here.
Okay, well, that worked out because the thing keeps going even if I have computer troubles.
Yeah, I figured that. Yeah.
I appreciate that immensely. And my internet dropped for a second. So I'm here, but I'm glad you've had Defo all to yourselves this whole time. So good job by you, sir.
I don't know that I was saying anything of any great significance, and it does throw the pattern off a little bit.
I'm sure.
Because you're sitting there going, well, I mean, and also you're thinking of hamina, you're not really sure if it's working, but, being on the safe side. I was a big fan of plugging this in on the radio, though.
Okay.
Which you can also do. I mean, and I guess we have people that do listen on the radio, and my son is a big podcast guy, so he downloads the show on his radio. And what am I greeted with yesterday when I showed up for the Easter celebration at my son's wife's mother's house, the lovely Susan Chaka and Stan the Man. And sure enough, here comes Christian, my almost 5-year-old grandson, so the younger one, and he says, Grandpa Defo, when are you going to be on the radio? And he listens. So I'm thinking, this really is the old adage of, where you would say something that wasn't necessarily, particularly in good taste on the radio. And then people would call, the program director and say, well, I have kids in the car and you're going to let this guttermouth piece of shit talk like that. Right. So, you're thinking, well, that's, the cat calling the kettle black. Right. So anyway, and maybe we need to be sensitive to that. I don't know. Cause I was asking my son, well, geez, was I cursing? Cause I try not to, overuse this. We don't want to, necessarily go pesky on these shows, but it is nice every now and then, as if it was a comma, separating a couple of parts of a sentence, to throw in, a 4-letter word, no, for emphasis.
It's so bad because I will curse here and there. And I didn't realize children were listening. So I'm sorry, Christian. Do not say that. Do not follow
This
it.
is a kid that's whirling around a yard trying to find Easter eggs and making a little house with cats and candies. It was called Christian's Cats and Candies.
Nice.
He's starting a business selling cats and candy at the same time. I don't know where he came up with this concept here, but I'm thinking, a wild imagination is good, is it not, Louie?
Oh no, it's great. Good for him.
Yeah,
He should embrace.
I embraced the whole thing. I really did. Anyway, I was talking about. I mean, is it 4-6 that the Marlins are? But apologies to Jim Sarney for not knowing the precise record, but I'm guessing 4-6, something like that. They lost a couple in a row to the Mets, and then they won yesterday, 7-2. Big ball game for the Marlins. Jazz Chisholm, all of a sudden, he's above 200. He's above the Mendoza line, and he made a great catch in center
He's
field. I mean,
making,
one of the
like,
best catches you'll see.
Catches like Willie Mays now.
I mean, it was as improbable as the Swoboda catches were for the Mets. The Mets, by the way, I mean, they're already fetching and wondering if everything has gone haywire. I mean, handed a tough blow. Maybe that was a sign from the gods of gambling when Edwin Diaz went down, doing nothing, jumping up and down with his Puerto Rican teammates as they were competing in the meaningless World Baseball Classic, which did what good for the Mets, in the $400 million payroll, 0.0. And yet, I'm saying that, and it sounds, harshly cynical, doesn't it? But it wasn't that long ago I was enamored with the World Baseball Classic, thinking, wow, that really was worthwhile. Right? When Ohtani was on the mound and he struck out Trout, unbelievable. And Japan, they're celebrating like this was the greatest sports victory in history. For, what seems like a bit of a fugazi tournament. No, Louie? I mean, what is it exactly? I still don't even know what the principle of it is, like how you qualify
and how many countries are in it. Like, a lot of the world doesn't play baseball.
Yeah, you don't see Sudan fielding a team in the World Baseball Classic.
You don't get a lot of, like, outside of I'm trying to think, South America, outside of Venezuela, like, what South American countries, Europe, who plays baseball in Europe? It's not a
baseball period anymore. The Marlins, by the way, 5 for 5 in stolen bases yesterday against the Mets rookie catching prospect. I believe they played like a young guy that's supposed to be a stud. So he goes 0 for 5 in throwing runners out. Would we blame that on the pitcher, Libby? I don't know.
Well, there's rules here too, right? Aren't you only allowed to throw over so many times or some shit?
Oh, you're only allowed to throw over 2 times, and the third time, it's very difficult to understand what exactly the rule is. Because and then it starts over again if the guy steals second. So if Lou Brock was on base, imagine Lou Brock knowing that you'd already used up your 2 throws to first base. Maury Wills, any of these great Ricky Henderson, they're just over there laughing, right? You may as well back the guy up, and hey, Boog, back off the bag there. You don't need to hold him on anymore. He's going to steal second anyway.
Yes,
just hand him the bag, uncontested. They call that, right? Mm-hmm. Uncontested. But the game is moving faster. I like the pitch clock, I think, was a worthwhile innovation, no? When is everybody going to need Tommy John as a result of the pitch clock? These fragile pitchers that there are, in the big leagues today. If you're throwing 100-mile-an-hour forkballs, there's a good chance that does Dr. James Andrews, did he retire? You don't see his name associated with any surgeries anymore, Louie, do you?
I don't think so.
No, because, did he retire, though? I mean, I haven't seen, right? Normally it was straight to Dr. James Andrews, like he was the only orthopedic surgeon anywhere in the country. And, I haven't heard his name associated with any surgeries, but I think they're going to be lining up, no? You're going to have to take a number to get Tommy John surgery at James Andrews' office. Okay, next.
I mean, they talk about him as though he is still doing it, but he's 80. Like, are you letting the 80-year-old actually do the surgery?
And he has Parkinson's? Is that, maybe a negative? You're going to see a surgeon? 80. He probably should hang it up, no?
I don't think
what do you think?
They talk about him as though he is still an American.
Maybe a consultant,
Yes. That's what I think. He's still. That's why you don't hear his name as much, because he probably doesn't perform the actual surgeries anymore. Yeah. He's just like there.
Yeah. All right. Make sure you do this. So who took his place? Stitch Duran out of the. This guy's in the corner of virtually every fight.
Duran.
The cut man, Stitch Duran. Yeah, it's a great name. for a cut man. Stitch. All right. We're coming back with more. We're going to be joined by Brett Tessler, the agent to the Stars. We'll talk a little football here. We do have the hockey playoffs on tap. There's still a couple of games left in the regular season, and the Panthers have not clinched their spot yet. I mean, they're playing great. It would be a shame now. That would be the ultimate, a tragic end to the season, wouldn't it? If somehow they didn't make the playoffs when they just caught fire. What do they bring? They bring back Bobrovsky.
No.
He almost looks like he's in one of those Hootie the Owl suits compared to this guy, Alex Lyon, who's been like lights out, man. This guy is holy Terry Sawchuk. He's playing great. So, they had a couple of guys have big seasons, and now they're clobbering people. They're winning like 7-2. I think they play Toronto tonight, and that's one of the two games they have remaining. But I don't know that they need to win them both. The Penguins are 1 point behind them. They're tied with the Islanders. They hold a tiebreaker over the Islanders. Not sure what their status is with the Penguins, but Pittsburgh still has 2 games. They all have 2 games left, and there's a 1 point differential between the three of them.
They've played well, but the other teams haven't fallen off a cliff. Like, I thought they would have clinched it by now. They've won like 5 or 6 or 7 in a row, and then you'll see the Islanders win or the Penguins win. So it's like, oh, that's annoying.
Yeah, it's been kind of wild. I mean, that would be something, huh? At the peak, they finally figured it out, and then you get eliminated from the playoffs, right, on some greasy goal. All right, we're coming back with Brett Tessler, the agent of the Stars. He'll have an opinion on the Panthers too, because Jim Sarney's always calling for that. And we'll come back in a moment. Now that 7:39.
Folks, Tony Segreto here. Let me ask you a question. What do you look for when you go out to eat? Good food, obviously, friendly atmosphere, not too loud, but good energy, reasonable prices, and a place where you feel comfortable. All those ingredients, no pun meant there, are hard to find unless you're talking about the Texas Roadhouse. You see, they encompass all of those attributes. Really, really good food, amazing atmosphere, good for a family, good for a date, or just a night out for yourself, and prices that will make you extremely happy. Their ribs, unmatched. Steaks, hand-cut every day. Everything, and I mean everything, is made on site, including their incredible bread. It's the one day, folks, that you can forget about low-carb diets. Trust me when I tell you, Texas Roadhouse, your restaurant, your destination when you say, where should we go and eat tonight?
From the newly renovated sports bar to the beautiful bayside views captured at the Tiki Bar, Jimmy Johnson's Big Chill has it all. Located at mile marker 104, the Big Chill also offers waterfront dining while experiencing breathtaking sunset views of the Florida Keys. It's simply the hottest spot in the Keys to cool off. That's Jimmy Johnson's Big Chill at mile marker 104 in Key Largo. For more information, call today at 305-453-9066.
The simple pleasures of this job, the way a stadium sounds when one of my players performs well on the field, the way we are meant to protect them in health and in injury. Less, more attention, caring for them, caring for ourselves in the games too.
The agent to the Stars, the one and only Brett Tessler.
Welcome back to the show on this Peel Yourself Off the Mat Monday. Jeff DeForest, Mike Lubitz. Hope everybody had a great weekend. I guess Passover is still passing over, is it not, Lubie?
Thursday.
Still a couple of big days coming up. Later on this week?
Thursday. It ends Thursday.
Thursday, okay. And back to the ceremonies, or no? That's it. Just it ends and it goes away until next year.
We call it a break fast, but like you do like a meal. Sometimes we do it with the family, but you can do it on your own, where you like eat bread.
Okay, all right.
Thing, yeah.
All right, sounds good, and we wish everybody the best. And Easter, I had a little celebration yesterday with the family, me being the only Jew among the contingent there, except I guess my son would be half Jewish, and grandchildren, and a quarter? It's getting very divided, man.
Yeah.
It's like a stock split. But anyway, had a great time. Hope everybody else did. And we certainly hope this man did, because he's always in a celebration mode. And we have many things to talk about with the great agent to the Stars, Brett Tessler, who joins us now, as he does every Monday at this time. Brett, how are you, my friend? Happy Easter, happy Passover.
Yes, happy Easter, happy Passover. Everything is great.
It sounds good. We wanted to get some of your Don Cherry-like hockey instincts here before we get started on some of these football matters, which there's always something popping in the National Football League that's worthy of discussion. But I'm watching this Panther team now. And every night, like, the scores are startling. Right, you're looking, they're up 9-1. And they're playing great. Kachuk has had his best season personally. Still, I mean, one of the great sports trades in South Florida history in terms of being favorable to our teams. What was this Kachuk for Huberto deal? Verhage goes for 40 goals. Alex Lyon looks like Rogie Vachon in there in his prime. What do you make of it? I mean, they're really, if you were looking for a playoff team in any sport that seemed to be coming together at the right time, would this not be it?
It would. And if this team makes the playoffs, I don't think anybody wants to face them the way that things are going for them now. And really, it sort of begins and ends with Alex Lyon, who, is just a 30-year-old journeyman goalie who's sort of bounced around, never really solidified himself as a bona fide NHL goalie. And here he is now in the right place at the right time. And you can really just see how the team responds to him. You could see the energy that the players in front of him are trying to play with. Now, this is not a defensive team, and many of their struggles and part of the reason why they're in this position where, it's going to come down to the wire as to whether or not they get a wild card spot is because of poor goaltending throughout the whole year, both from Bobrovsky and Spencer Knight. As well as, many defensive breakdowns, which you still see them having. If you watch the last game, I mean, they made a lot of mistakes, and Alex Lyon is stepping up and bailing them out. But nonetheless, again, the guy really, just plays with an energy. You can just see it. And, there's no doubt that the guys out there on the ice with him are really sort of feeding off that. And that explains how they've been so hot for most of the last couple weeks to even put themselves in this position where they can get one of the final two wild card spots.
It's interesting because, here they are in a dogfight to make the postseason, and it looks like they're very determined, to try and get there. And yet, and just in a general sports sense, curious to get your thoughts on what happened with the Dallas Mavericks. Where and looking deeper or more deeply at it, they had the added incentive. They had a deal with the Knicks in the Porzingis trade that they made many years ago, and that included a protected first round pick, which was protected up to number 10. So they happened to be in the 10th spot there in the lottery, and maybe that was part of the reason they did what they went out and stated they were going to do, which was just absolutely try to blow their last couple of games to make sure they didn't make the postseason. That's kind of a fan thing where fans are always screaming, Brett, oh, geez, I'd rather not go to the postseason, just, going to lose in the first round. But as a team in any professional sports league, is this something that should be condoned with the usual, oh, well, there's not, I guess there is nothing they could do about it now. But what's your feeling about just openly and deliberately saying, well, we're going to lose this game because we don't want into the postseason?
Well, tanking has been around for a very, very long time. And as far as openly and deliberately saying it, those are the teams that get themselves into hot water with their league, with the media, with certain segment of the fan base. The old school segment of the fan base that believes that you should play to win every game, regardless of the circumstances.
Yeah.
The reality is, from a strategic standpoint, from a long game standpoint, from a big picture standpoint, tanking's clearly the way to go, because you look at the difference that certain players can and have made for their organizations. For example, I mean, look at the Bengals, just perennially bad team, and like any team, I mean, look, every team not only has a salary cap, but they have a salary floor. So if you're bad enough, like the Bengals have been for so many years, and you're drafting high enough every year like they are, where you're going to get some talented pieces, whether it be an offensive lineman here or there, an impact defensive player here or there, as well as you have money that you have to spend either to keep your young emerging talent or go out there in free agency every year and sign somebody. When you're able to go ahead and get yourself a Joe Burrow, who's a generational type talent, arguably the best quarterback in the league, certainly one of the top three, that's going to make a major difference. And that's football, a sport where one player, albeit a quarterback, still has less of an impact because so many other things are going on than a sport like basketball, where, I mean, there's only 5 guys out there. So you end up getting a superstar. You win the lottery ticket to get yourself a LeBron James, or, the occasional ultra talented guys who, come around every few years, then that's going to completely reverse the fortunes of your franchise for potentially the next decade. So, why wouldn't a team intelligently want to do that when the option is maybe winning one more game, like who was it last year in the NFL that did that? The Texans. Thankfully, for them, this isn't a year where there was a Joe Burrow or that kind of guy. We'll see how things pan out here in this draft in the next few weeks. But, when you look at the difference that in the NBA it's made to get one of those top guys, same thing in the NHL every once in a while, there's a Connor McDavid, Sidney Crosby type. That's going to change a franchise's fortune for years and years and years and years. So it doesn't really do you a whole lot of good to win that extra game or eke your way into that last playoff spot if you know your team has the chance to go absolutely nowhere.
All right. The Ravens made headlines by signing a player of note. It was not Lamar Jackson, though, who I guess, they still have under contract with that restricted franchise tag that they have on him. But they get Odell Beckham. What were your thoughts about this? There was supposedly, I guess, any number of teams that were interested in Beckham, including the Jets. Is there any significance to the Ravens getting Odell Beckham Jr. yesterday?
Yeah, that whole thing's just a head scratcher to me, and a vision, and they have plans for him that I don't think a lot of other people see. Because, when you look at that situation as a whole, number one, you've got the whole Lamar Jackson thing hanging over. Nobody knows when or if that guy's even going to go ahead and sign that franchise tender. Does he sit out the whole year? To me, the smarter thing would be to sit out 10 games of the year, then come back as a quarterback. At that point, you're pretty much useless to your team. You still wind up making nearly half of the franchise tender amount. And most importantly, this season counts as one less franchise tender they can put on you. And so strategically, if he wants to play hardball, that would be the ultimate way to do it. So you have that situation, which, is of far greater importance to adding someone like Odell Beckham. And then on top of that, let's just say Lamar Jackson is there for week 1. This isn't really the type of passing offense that a guy like Odell Beckham, who's known to be very needy as it relates to balls coming in his direction. That's kind of been part of the problem.
Yeah.
At different points in his career, that they weren't throwing him enough balls. They didn't have a quarterback that was good enough to get him. The statistics, like some of the other premier receivers out there were able to get, in his early years when he truly was one of the most dynamic weapons this league has ever seen, he put up insane numbers in spite of certain deficiencies that team may have had at quarterback. Because while Eli Manning, I think we would all agree is a very good quarterback, imagine what the numbers would have been like if he had Peyton Manning or Aaron Rodgers or that kind of thing. So that was the whole idea about him maybe going to the New York Jets with Aaron Rodgers. That kind of made sense. In this situation, you're putting a guy who's aging, coming off injury, a guy who has a lot of off the field type of
drama, you would say,
that tend to follow him around. And then on top of that, you're putting him in an offense that's just known to not be the most beneficial offense for receivers. On top of that, you're spending a lot of money, way more money than anybody else would have thought that you would have needed to spend to get Odell Beckham at this point, and burn money in cap dollars where that money could have been spent to somehow try to figure out a way to pacify Lamar Jackson and to rectify that situation. The whole thing, just from, one end to the other, just sort of leaves me, and I think many other people out there, just a little bit confused.
You would know the hard dates on this, but when is the last day that this stalemate that's supposedly been going on between Green Bay and the Jets? When does that finally expire? And you'll have Rodgers actually become a part of the Jets team, or is there still even the most remote chance that that doesn't happen?
Yeah, I feel like it's going to happen, and but then again, a lot of people felt like Odell Beckham was going to the Jets this week. So
Yeah.
you see what can happen if you leave the door open. And so I just think it's a little confusing. And we've talked about this. And again, I think the powers that be for both organizations, the Packers and the Jets, are both known to be fair. They're both, personally likable organizations to deal with. So, with the people involved in this, I think it could be something that, can and should get done without too much difficulty. But it's sort of like a matter of everyone's just taking that wait and see. And as I've told you since day one in this business, nothing happens until it has to. And that situation doesn't really have to, because unlike Odell Beckham, who's a free agent, Aaron Rodgers is under contract with the Packers. He's like a hot potato to them. They need to get rid of him. I mean, his cap number's too high. They've made it clear that Jordan Love is their quarterback of the future. He's made it clear that he doesn't want to be there anymore, and I don't think he's really wanted to be there the last two seasons. So as long as he still desires to play football, they can only trade him somewhere that he wants to go. You cannot acquire a starting quarterback if you're a team that player does not want to go to. And so with that being said, I'd say it's 99% that he will end up a Jet at some point. And I guess, if they want to wait, probably the most sensible time to get it done is early in the draft, once that first round is gone. So there's no more first round pick for the Jets to trade for the Packers this year, which obviously they don't want to give them. Once that comes and goes, then I don't think there's really any need from the Packers' perspective to wait any further. I think they should do then what they could do now, which is get the best deal you can and get Aaron Rodgers out of there, so Jordan Love and the rest of the players on that team don't have to answer questions about it every day, and it doesn't become a distraction that lingers, and then both parties can go their separate ways. And hopefully years from now, Aaron Rodgers' relationship with the Packers will be better than what Brett Favre's turned out to be.
It'd be so funny to see another shot of Rodgers showing up looking like Nick Cage in Con Air at the Packers training facility. And the next shot you would see, I would imagine, would be the GM, diving out of the highest building in Wisconsin. All right. Do you have an opinion on where you think the first big blunder will be made in the upcoming NFL draft? I mean, we have a couple of quarterbacks, Stroud and Young, that are debatable. 1-2 seems like the common consensus is Stroud will be the first guy taken, Young number 2. This Richardson kid out of Florida. Is the steam around the league amongst your many insiders there, Brett Tessler, what it is, among media types who are speculating this guy might even go as high as number 3 in the draft?
So the guy is a freak athlete. There's absolutely no two ways about it. And those are the kind of guys that everybody gets excited about this time of the year. The teams get excited, the media gets excited, the fans get excited, just because in the event that somehow, some way, this guy is able to harness his natural gifts and basically fine tune himself into an NFL quarterback. I mean, you could have the type of talent with a ceiling unlike you've ever seen before. The problem is, not only is there a super high ceiling, there's a very low floor. And if I'm a team drafting anywhere near the top of the draft, that's just not a gamble I'm willing to take. When you have that kind of pick, when you've got a top 10, top 15, you're in the top half of the draft, you really can't miss. And even though there's no such thing as a can't miss player, as in even a Tony Mandrich, even guys who everybody thought, hey, at worst, this guy's going to be a very, very good player. there's no such thing as a 100% sure bet in the draft, and that's kind of what makes it so exciting and so fun, that you could have the number 1 overall pick and end up with Courtney Brown, or you could have a pick in the 6th round and end up with the GOAT. So that's what makes our draft, more so than any others, so much fun, because some of the best players in this league, some of the best players in the history of this league, weren't even drafted. So unlike most other sports, our draft truly is the biggest crapshoot, but that doesn't mean that if you're a team who has, quote, earned the right to draft high, meaning you've been a bad team, you just can't afford to take that kind of a swing and a miss. And, even though, again, you can't control injuries, you can't control just how certain guys are or are not going to be able to handle the transition from college to the pros, you at least need to make the move that, if it doesn't work out, won't get you fired. Meaning, at least if you take the guy who everybody would agree makes sense, fits your schemes, the position you need, been a good player, been a good solid citizen. If that doesn't work out for one reason or another, it's a lot easier to explain to your owner. You go ahead and take a swing at a guy like this, unless you are a real solid GM as it relates to your employment, then, that's just a gamble that I don't think, if I'm a GM, I'm willing to take.
Pink slip could come with it. That's for sure. Where is the draft this year? Is it back in Vegas? Because that seemed like it was very successful when they were standing in the middle of the lake there with the Bellagio fountains and everything, and coming out there to get the big hug from Roger Goodell. Not sure where it's situated, but if it was in Vegas, would you be inclined to go, Brett Tessler?
No, I don't ever attend the draft, because, when you start to get to that part of the draft later in the draft, you need to be available to all the teams on the phone.
Yeah.
And this year's draft is in Kansas City.
Oh, okay. I wouldn't be going there.
No, the way it goes is you see, these agents with their top players on TV the first day. Once that day's over, those agents are not hanging around there. They're getting right back to their office, right back to their phones, because for all the later round guys that many agents have, or undrafted guys, you basically have to be in your office evaluating everything, charting every pick, being ready, because when that draft ends, there's no time to start looking at depth charts then and figuring out who needs what. These are things that good agents are already prepared for. And, I'd like to think that that's also a part of the business that I've done pretty well at. And, I take it pretty serious, and I take a lot of pride in the work that I put into that. And so I feel like my batting average as it relates to success with some of those undrafted later round guys has been pretty good.
Oh, no doubt about it, man. That's why you are the agent, not only to stars, but the stars that have literally risen from nowhere, and have been on that treadmill where you're just outside the league and can't seem to catch a break, and get a coach to give you a shot. All right, Brent, always a pleasure, my friend. Appreciate it. And how many weeks away are we from the draft? Like 2? Is that?
Yeah, that's
okay?
It.
All right,
Quickly coming upon us. So. A few weeks away, and as far as I'm concerned, it can't come soon enough, because the process, just from when you sign these guys, it feels like it's been forever. And it's a very slow process.
Yeah.
And it's something where you have to, even from day one, you have to make these guys understand that it is a slow process, and there's going to be days, weeks, when absolutely nothing's happening, when teams are just kind of focused on all-star games. And if there's guys who aren't at all-star games or at the combine, it's really not their time. And then the pro day ends up happening in March, and that's when things really get going. But prior to that, guys are just kind of training. Agents are just kind of there to help out with whatever. And, thankfully now here we are, and things are about to get fun.
All right. Sounds good. We'll let you get back to work, and appreciate you taking time as always, Brett Tessler, the Agent of the Stars, for joining us here on the show. And go Cats, man! Is that game tonight also? Toronto against? Are you going to be there? See them take on the Leafs and clinch? Oh, nice.
Yeah. Last two games of the season are tonight and then Thursday against Carolina. So these are two of the very toughest teams in the league, whereas the teams we're competing with, Pittsburgh and the Islanders, both played two of the absolute worst teams in the league.
Wow.
Realistically, for the Panthers to make it, they realistically have to come away with 3 points in these last two games, meaning they have
Wow.
to win one and have to at least get to overtime in the next, because I honestly believe anything less than that, I think if they actually lose one of these games in regulation, I think they're probably going to wind up missing by a point.
Oh, my God. That is so sick that
That
you
would
would
be like
gather this kind of momentum and find a goalie out of nowhere, some journeyman who you never even knew was on the roster, and all of a sudden he's playing like Terry Sawchuk. And then, to miss the playoffs would be really, typical of the Panther irony and the drama that's afflicted this team over the years. Brett, always a pleasure, my friend. Thanks so much for being with us. It was a lot of fun.
All right, guys. Take care.
Thanks a lot. Brett Tessler, Agent of the Stars. Wow, I mean, that would be something. How deflating would that be after this big run here? I want to say it's 6 victories in a row for the Panthers. 6? Is that the right number? And they've been crushing defeats of the opposition. And this Alex Lyon has set like records all of a sudden. He's stopping 50 shots a game. It's been fantastic. Kachuk been outrageous for the team, and I am still trying to think of trades that were very lopsided in favor of the South Florida team, Lubie. I mean, I don't even know if you can count the Shaqquisition in that sense, where, they traded a couple of players that actually went on to have decent NBA careers for the short-term advantage of having Shaq on their roster. And then, subsequently, what I thought was an even sharper deal by Pat Riley, he was able to unload a bloated Shaq a couple of years later when he no longer had any use for him, because he was going to have to. What happened there after the 2006 championship? Did they go into some kind of brief rebuilding mode?
Wade got next year they were going to be really good, and then remember Wade was hurt for like half the fucking year.
Yeah,
and then when Wade came back, Shaq got hurt. So that year was a throwaway, and then
I don't think Shaq was 100% into it anymore.
The next year, Shaq wasn't himself, so that's when they traded him for Sean Marion.
Yeah. And when they acquired Shaq, though, they gave up what? Caron Butler and who else?
Odom.
Oh, and Lamar Odom. Okay, so two guys that had reasonably good NBA careers. Still, for the chance to win a championship, and the fact that they did, even though Shaq wasn't necessarily the biggest part of that, because Alonzo Mourning had to come in and fill in for him in the postseason, and did a great job. But I mean, I guess overall that you would have to say that trade was worth it, but it wasn't necessarily as lopsided as this Matt Tkachuk for Jonathan Huberdeau, and whatever other considerations the Panthers sent Calgary's way. Because Tkachuk's been a monster for them this year.
Tkachuk's
absolute monster. I mean, he has delivered. I remember when we got Pavel Bure. I mean, he scored a lot of goals, but sort of lived up to his reputation because he wasn't going to do a whole lot else except bring Anna Kournikova to the ice. Which, for that alone, we should forever be indebted to the great Pavel Bure. All right, many other things to discuss here, and Scoop Skolnick's going to join us. We'll get into the NBA playoffs upcoming, and nobody better than Scoop Skolnick of 5 Reasons Sports Network, one of our fine affiliations as well.
Put it this way, Tkachuk has 108 points. Huberdeau is 54.
What other trades though did we really smoke somebody in as a South Florida sports entity?
Like the Zoe trade was solid because the Heat were nothing until Zoe, and then they became a factor. But Glenn Rice ended up helping that franchise win a series. Jamal Mashburn ended up helping the Hornets beat the Heat.
We were better off with Zoe though than we were the other players.
Jamal Mashburn was an interesting player. Zoe made us literally a number 1 seed and an Eastern Conference contender. So,
but not super lopsided. I mean, you can't say that was overwhelmingly lopsided.
Yes, they at least got.
Have the Dolphins ever done anything where you said, "My God, how did they?" I mean, there has to be a trade somewhere in their history where they just absolutely annihilated somebody, rolled over him.
Was Tyreek Hill? Tyreek Hill was a trade or free agent? Oh, it was a trade. They gave a shitload of draft picks, and that's the thing. As good as Tyreek Hill was for the Dolphins, the Chiefs went on to win a Super Bowl. So, it's not like they were crying.
Exactly. And if the guy was, I don't know, was he disgruntled there in Kansas City? It seemed like he was a big fan of Patrick Mahomes, and it wasn't like I mean he had been in some jackpots before. It was like he had a little bit of a checkered past, as not exactly sure what it was. I mean, but was perceived to be not necessarily the easiest of guys to tolerate.
Well, the problem
But
was they would have been fine with him. They would have been good with him. But remember, they had holes in the offensive and defensive line, and that's why they didn't pay him, because they knew with Mahomes, he's going to take
yeah,
whatever receivers and make them better. When he doesn't have an offensive line, they lost the Super Bowl just because they would have beaten the Bucs. They were the better team. They were missing 3 dudes, so they needed starters and depth on the offensive line, and not paying Hill that ridiculous ass salary allowed them to replenish their offensive and defensive lines, and they then went on to win the Super Bowl.
yeah. It remains to be seen too. I mean, if the Dolphins win a Super Bowl, which seems improbable this year, although not completely out of the question. What the results will be for Kansas City, because didn't they get like a boatload of draft picks in that deal? So, but we can't say that was overwhelmingly lopsided yet. This one we can say is completely lopsided, because you would have to think that Huberdeau is going to be in decline as an older player, whereas Kachuk is literally rolling into his prime.
Yep.
And we don't usually benefit like that on deals. We usually make the bad deal, don't we? South Florida teams in general, with the exception of Pat Riley.
I was going to say the Marlins.
Right. Or we're selling off players, so we're getting nothing back. We're getting a Cameron Maben back, for some monster like Miggy. I mean, it's just, it's been very lopsided, I think, against South Florida teams. Most of the blockbuster trades have blown up in our face. I think, and maybe that's only natural, a byproduct of the fact that when you're selling off players in desperation, you're not necessarily going to get anything great in return. It can happen, but it never happens to us, because we must have the blindest scouts in all of baseball with that Marlin organization. No,
You're talking about the Marlins. They lose every trade.
Every trade they get buried on, right? Every single time.
No matter
incredible.
It's like
Right. I mean, they hold all the cards, right? 10 teams want to, get Giancarlo Stanton off his 58 and 59 home run season. And we get back what? A bunch of nothing. Yelich.
nothing.
Same thing. Nothing. And then they, sell you on the idea, oh, man, wait till you see this guy pitch. And then we never see him pitch. Like, never.
Was Warfield a trade? I never understood how they got. Was Warfield already? He was already great, right? Like, I never understood how the Dolphins.
Who's that?
Paul Warfield.
Oh, Warfield, yeah.
Is he a trade? Like, I never understood how he was.
But Warfield as a Dolphin, yeah, he might have been traded from the Cleveland Browns.
He was already great, wasn't he? Like, already considered.
I don't even know if you had free agency back then.
You didn't. No.
Yeah.
NFL free agency was like the last NFL free agency.
Yeah.
I was alive and knowledgeable when NFL free agency didn't come around until like 1990.
Then in that time, you could trade like an assistant coach for Warfield or something.
Well, that's what Andy.
They were bizarre. Yeah.
Browns.
But Warfield as a Dolphin, as great as he was, I mean, you remember him as a great receiver with the Cleveland Browns, and they didn't utilize him much as a Dolphin. I mean, imagine how good this team was if you could use Paul Warfield as a decoy. We've said that many, many times. But, in a Super Bowl game where you have Paul Warfield on the field and you only throw the ball 7 times the entire game. I guess the Jets used that strategy to win, the historic Super Bowl III, which did as much to shape the current status of the NFL as any single, certainly any ball game or any incident. But they were a passing team during the season, and then all of a sudden they had excellent running backs with Boozer and Snell, and Matt Snell had a monster game. They just ran the ball. It was a very conservative approach by Joe Willie in that Super Bowl III game. And they controlled the pace of the game and controlled it from the outset by being that was a weird thing, was the AFL team was the stronger, more powerful team over this Dolphin team that was built around just crushing people. No, the Baltimore team that was built around crushing people.
That's it.
Yeah, with Don Shula coaching the Baltimore Colts. And that did look almost impossible, right? That was kind of like, I mean, when you see some people might remember this when you had Jimmy Young fighting Muhammad Ali. And Jimmy Young was a guy that literally couldn't break an egg with either hand. He was a decent boxer as a heavyweight. But it really didn't belong in there with like Ali, if Ali was anything of himself that night. But Ali takes the night off and basically was defeated by this guy. They gave it to him on the scorecards in a bogus decision. And, you were thinking, wow, I mean, there should be no chance of this guy with no power whatsoever beating the heavyweight champion of the world. And that's kind of how the Jets were against the Colts. I mean, you would have thought no way that they could outmuscle them in that ball game, which essentially they did. All right, we're coming back. Scoop Skolnick on the playoffs. The Heat are going to be in there against the Atlanta Hawks. I don't know why I feel overwhelmingly confident that they will beat the Hawks in that game on Tuesday night. That's tomorrow night. They get the postseason started. Are you even remotely excited about it, Mike Lubie? Would they not be in there with at least a slight chance? Am I dreaming here, fans? Do they have a slight chance to beat the Celtics in a best of 7 if they win this game against the Hawks on Tuesday night?
This is how I've heard it stated, and I can't fight that. As a Heat fan,
Celtics in 6 would be your immediate reaction.
Yes, I don't
maybe
see
5
getting out of the first round of the NBA playoffs. But if I was a Sixers, Celtics, or Bucks, I wouldn't want to play the Heat in the first round like that. I give you that. Like, you want to play a fucking cake team in round 1. The Heat are not cake. Jimmy Butler is as good as any playoff player in the NBA. You can say whatever you want about Jimmy Butler regular season. If you don't want to put him in the top 10, fine, even though he is. When it comes to the playoffs, he's as scary as any player. LeBron, Jokic, Giannis, you can call it, say whoever you want. Jimmy Butler morphs into fucking Michael Jordan in the playoffs. Like, Jimmy Butler in the playoffs is fucking scary, and I would not want to play that guy in round 1. Like, usually round 1, like at the Nets, right? The Nets are playing good, but none of their 1 players are scary. They don't have a superstar. Like, usually you're playing an 8th or a 7th seed. They don't have a uber superstar. Well, Jimmy Butler is in the playoffs. So, yes, if I'm one of those teams, I would not want to play them. But being a fan of the Heat, I don't see them getting out. I just don't see it. Like, they don't have enough. It's literally Jimmy Butler and then, like, Bam. And, like, all these guys leave him hanging way too often.
All right. We'll see what happens. Udonis Haslem retires. We should mention that.
Yes.
Or is going to retire. What was that, his last home game? Yeah. That was the last game of the season.
Yeah, but if you're the play-in is still played at your own arenas, right? Like, if you're the
they're the home team for the play-in game. Yeah,
I never understood. I guess it was his last regular season home game. I guess.
Okay, because they made a big deal of it. I saw you had a dunk in the game. Did he do anything else?
He had 24 points.
24 points, Haslem.
He dominated.
No,
out of his mind.
All this time, Spo was sitting him on a bench. What kind of coaching is that?
I mean, the Magic are
a monster there. Were they getting out of the way? It looked like a little Matador defense when Haslem was getting the ball.
I think it was very much
looked like the All-Star game.
Let him go. I think
a disgrace. Yeah. All right, Scoop's going to join us. We'll get into this whole NBA picture, which also consists of a Western Conference, which is full of nothing but question marks in terms of who might emerge, who holds the edge. I mean, there's some first-round series that look like they could be very, very trepidatious. So let's say the Phoenix Suns there are in tough, are they not, in their first-round series, even with the great Kevin Durant, their big acquisition. There was a tank job by the Dallas Mavericks. I thought that was disgusting, and for the league to allow that to go on, what can you do about it when a team just says we're not playing any of our starters? They had Luka Doncic in the game for a quarter because I don't know, it might have been Luka Doncic bobblehead night or something. But they left him in there for a quarter, and Luka says he wants to come back to Dallas and play some more with Kyrie Irving. So,
he'll play one more year there. I just don't see next year when he's a free agent, if they're like this again, which they will be.
Yeah.
Like, how can you want to stay there? That makes no sense.
Jason Kidd, is he morphing into Howie Mandel a little bit?
The luck.
And trying to explain the inexplicable is always difficult, is it not? I mean, he handled it very well. Or he said, you'd have to talk to my bosses about this. But, and they ask him, do you agree with the decision, to rest all of these guys and bench them? And essentially, deliberately miss the playoffs. And they were still, losing that game. I mean, winning that game for a while with the scrubs. I always love that. When the scrubs come in there and they play their eyeballs out. And, look where it got Brian Flores, having people, like that. So Jason Kidd's tenure there, I guess he said all the right things to keep his job at that point. Your man, Dwayne Casey, is stepping out of the coaching position at Detroit. And who else hung it up as a head coach in the NBA?
Well, they're talking about replacing Nick Nurse in Toronto.
Oh, yeah? Houston, the Rockets guy got fired. Yeah, yeah.
Younger Silas, yes.
Boy, that guy had no chance whatsoever.
It's just it's fine, I guess, because you're going to eventually try, and maybe you want a real coach to try. But
yeah,
it wasn't his fault that they weren't good.
How many job interviews will Mike D'Antoni have?
Yeah, exactly.
You think? All right, we're coming back with Scoop Skolnick. We're getting into all this basketball. Hialeah Park. Wow, what a great place, man. I mean, they were always celebrating there, and if you're in a celebration mode, it's a great place to go because you're going to have a great time. Hialeah Park really does it like nobody else in the casino business. I was in a very dead casino nearby my home here in terms of slot play. I did not hear anybody screaming or yelling like you do at Hialeah Park, where, the most common two words that are ever seen there are call attendant, man, as in you need a cash handoff payoff. Right here, this number that you've won is too large for us to even have you get up and go to the cage, man. We're going to pay you right here with this jackpot. Jackpots galore. The Royal Reel's red hot over there at Hialeah Park, and they have the Lightning Lotto and all your favorite Vegas-style games, including craps and roulette and blackjack. Then the Champion Simulcasting Room, great place for all of the classics. Had some big races over the weekend. $120 horse won the Wood Memorial, trained by Safi Joseph, who was based here locally at Gulfstream Park. So congratulations in order there. And there was a DQ, possibility, and all this other stuff went on. They left the result, and $120 horse ended up winning the Wood Memorial. Bluegrass Stakes. I'm trying to recall who won the race. I don't even remember because I was emblazoned in a sea of losing tickets, which I wanted to set on fire. I mean, I really did. It was such ugliness. The bludgeoning 2 days in a row is tough to take. I don't usually get clobbered like that back-to-back days. But what should I do, Libby, to change my luck? What do you think?
I have no idea. I just stopped gambling. And I know that's
that's one solution, but obviously that's not an alternative. What else is there?
You're like, more?
Well, we're Friday at Gulfstream. I mean, I'm obligated to send in some cash there, am I not?
Do anything, but
yeah,
you can.
That's been a good thing. I hope Mayo keeps that going all summer. He was talking about like backing off like a little bit, but no, I like going out there every Friday. It makes you have an incentive, like the carrot dangling at the end of every week, right? Appropriate because it's a food show. Yeah,
it's a great way to end the week. Yep.
Yeah, out there at Gulfstream Park, and then just wander off. Plus, I don't know. I did that diva thing where I said, well, I got to get a racing form free every time I come out there. And I have. It's one of the few considerations. I should have asked for more all during my, previous endeavors. No, Lubie? We didn't even want anybody to know that we worked there. All right, we do have Scoop Skolnick, so we're coming back with more. Hialeah Park, great place to go. Poker room is just absolutely exquisite, and the Champion Simulcasting Room, great place to punch on all of the big race days, including the Kentucky Derby. It's always festive out there then. Make sure you make your plans to go to beautiful Hialeah Park. All right, baskets coming up next. Nobody better to talk to about it than our own beloved Ethan Scoop Skolnick of 5 Reasons Sports Network, an entrepreneur in the sports business and a guy who really knows his business when it comes to basketball. That's coming up in a moment. Now that.
The time.
It's 8:20. Ponies in Style at Champions, the outstanding simulcasting room at beautiful Hialeah Park. Yes, the grand old lady of thoroughbred racing has never been more vibrant, and you can wager on the races from the top tracks around the country while enjoying a cocktail at the Brass Rail Bar or any of the fine food served throughout the facility. If poker is your game, you're covered in style, and you can play all your favorite Vegas-style games, including blackjack, craps, and roulette, in Hialeah Park's sizzling hot casino. Get a player's card when you walk through the door for all kinds of generous amenities, including our favorite, free play, when you come out to the ultimate casino and entertainment destination, Hialeah Park.
These days, we're all looking for comfort anywhere we can find it. Thank goodness for Landlubbers Raw Bar and Grill in the Plantation location, because they are making sure you are as comfortable as possible. First of all, they're not only open for delivery and pickup. All you have to do is go to landlubbersbarandgrill.com for both pickup and free delivery. Their hours have changed a little bit. Monday through Thursday from 3:30 to 10, and Friday, Saturday, and Sunday from 11:30 to 10. You're going to have the best wings in the world. You're going to have a great burger. You're going to have their amazing soups. Again, Landlubbers, Raw Bar, and Grill. It's nice and easy. Just go to landlubbersbarandgrill.com for both your pickup and free delivery. Thank goodness for Landlubbers for making you always feel right at home.
This comes from the great Defo Llama. It's the bets you don't make, the chances you don't take, that can compromise an otherwise incredible life, my friend.
The only way to get your morning started is with Defo, joined by Lubie, right here on The Defo Show.
And there was another reason that I was screaming, "You scab live tour scumbag!" every time that Brooks Koepka went into his backswing, because I didn't bet him at 30-1, and it looked like he was going to run away with the tournament. We welcome to the show the handsome devil down there at the bottom of your screen is the great Ethan Skolnick, who is. I think. I mean, maybe you would go toe to toe 1-on-1A with Winterman, most knowledgeable guy about the Miami Heat here in town. I don't even think Andy Ellisberg knows as much about this team as you do. Scoop, how are you, my friend? Good to see you.
I'm good. I'll go hair to hair with Winterman.
No, you're in good shape in that category compared to Winterman, who he's already left the category. I wanted to get into this with you before we get into the Miami Heat and their playoff possibilities, and then take a look maybe around the rest of the league. But this Dallas thing, how does it strike you? We talk about tanking, and it's kind of like, people talk about like reforming gun laws after a school shooting. I don't mean to put it in that same category. Obviously, we're in the toy department, but or human rights atrocities with the Saudis. When they're discussing taking the money on the Live Tour or all of this other sports washing that goes on, but nothing is really ever done about it, and there really are no consequences for any of the people involved, and nothing comes from the league. But what do you make of it? I mean, that Dallas just flatly says, we'd rather not make the playoffs. I saw there was a contingent Knicks, first round draft pick that might have factored into it. And when you put that in the equation, it actually maybe makes a little more sense that Dallas did, choose to not play in the play-in tournament or trying to make it. But what do you think? I mean, what does this do for the league, if anything, in terms of its image? And, how do you feel about it?
Well, there are a lot of elements to it. The first thing is, the only reason Dallas is really in trouble here is they said the quiet part loud, right? Like that's really the issue. I mean, a lot of teams tank, or maybe they frame it as repositioning, or they try to protect assets that they've traded. Like you mentioned the Knicks pick. That's really what this was about.
Porzingis trade. Yeah.
Yeah, right. It was about protecting the pick that was protected through the top 10. So in other words, they didn't want to make the playoffs so that they would keep that pick. But there are a few things here. First thing, the fact that Dallas did this is ridiculous, because Dallas just traded its entire bench to make the playoffs this year, to get Kyrie Irving, who doesn't even appear he's going to stay. I mean, he basically walked down in his exit interview yesterday without talking to the media. It doesn't seem like he's intending to stay in Dallas. So that's the first thing. Mark Cuban made a horrible trade again. And this is a pattern with Cuban now, that he cannot seem to figure out how to complement Luka Doncic. He made the trade for Porzingis. They didn't get along, and then Porzingis left and had a really good year with Washington this year. Brunson, they could have signed Brunson to an extension half of what the Knicks ultimately paid him. They decided not to do it, and then when the time came, he left for New York. Now, people can say, well, he was going to go anyway because his father has relationships up there and played there. But I don't know that he was necessarily going to go. It seemed to me like he wanted to stay in Dallas. They just offered him the money. And then, they didn't require Luka to play any defense. They got Christian Wood and wouldn't play him. So there's a whole bunch of different issues that went on with Dallas that make this specific to Dallas. Now, as far as what the league can do about any of this, it's really difficult, again, except for the fact that Dallas said it out loud. Right? I mean, that's... And you look at some of these teams, I mean, the tanking, I mean, Utah is a perfect example of this, right? Utah surprised everybody and itself by playing so well through the first 40 to 50 games of the season, and then basically decided, wait a second, this is not what we intended to do. Yep. And like Lauri Markkanen played only like 3 of the last 14 games. That was their all-star. So they just did it quietly, right? Like there were a couple games against the Heat. Like Utah had one of these. Detroit had one of these where it was just like there was a certain point of the game where you just realized like the other team decided they did not want to win.
Right.
And so I don't know what you do, Defo, except I guess you set an example with Dallas, but they've tried some things. Like they changed the lottery so that the odds are the same for the first, the worst 3 teams, so that you don't have, teams trying to get more ping pong balls once they get into the top 3. They've tried some things, but it's very difficult. I mean, you can't have a league that is saying, well, don't tank, but at the same time, they're streaming Wemby games
Yeah.
before he comes into the league. I mean, what are we doing here? You're basically saying this is what you're tanking for.
Sure.
So go tank away. But oh wait, if you say you're tanking, we're gonna fine you or take away your picks. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a lot of stuff that's going on the political scene. It's just as illogical. Yeah, I was going to say only MAGA Republicans could make a case that this was a good thing.
I'll let you say that, Defo. I'll let you say that.
It seems kind of radical. And I remember getting this theory a long time ago from the great Eddie Kaplan. I've become a huge proponent of it, and that is, these leagues need to stop rewarding futility.
Mm-hmm.
And instead provide every incentive to win every game, somehow, and just eliminate the idea that the worst team is going to get the best chance to get the player that's available. And in this case, this Zemby cat, who is one of those guys that you're thinking, my God, it's like LeBron James. How can we lose if we have this guy on our roster?
I'm with you. I feel like what they've created with this parity thing, which is sort of based on the NFL in large degree.
NFL should do the same. I mean,
I agree with you, but what's happened here in the NBA? I mean, look at this season. Now, a lot of people would say, okay, this is interesting. You've got every team in the West has 43 wins, basically.
Yeah.
You don't know who's going to come out of it. Every team is flawed in some way. You don't really have a super team. Like Denver's really good. Do you trust them in the playoffs? Memphis is going to the playoffs with a bunch of injuries. They've had the jaw issue this year. Sacramento, nobody trusts Sacramento. Nobody's picking Sacramento to beat Golden State. Golden State won 9 games on the road the whole year. They're flawed.
Yeah.
Okay. The Clippers are going into the playoffs without Paul George. Okay. Phoenix looks great when Durant plays. How long is Durant going to actually play? How long? What do we know about that group? I mean, literally every team has issues except probably Milwaukee, honestly, and maybe Boston and Philly's issue is its coach. But I mean, if the fact that everybody is kind of okay, good, but not great, that sounds good now. But then the league does better with ratings when there's a team that everybody is shooting for. When there was a Bulls, when there was, LeBron's best teams, etc. So. This idea of going for parity, I don't know. I mean, I feel like I feel like the league is going to shift back the other way. And if you're going to shift back the other way, then I'm going to agree with you. Reward success. And now they've added this stupid tournament in the middle of the year, which nobody understands, which is going to start next year.
Well, what is the point of that, though?
To sit players during the real games, which to me is just idiotic.
Well, what is the point of the tournament? What is that? I
don't know.
What is that going to prove?
I don't know. I've literally looked at it. I'm not saying that facetiously, Devo. I've literally looked at it, and I'm like, I don't know what they're trying to accomplish here. I don't. They're trying to reward the Washington Wizards during the season because a team like that is going to win it.
Yeah, I don't even understand the concept or the need for it. It seemed like things were fine, the way they were. But I do believe that. Even though I'm not usually a big fan of bastardizing the playoffs by adding more teams, that by putting this play-in tournament aspect in, they did make the last few regular season games more meaningful and more exciting, and more cities were involved. All right, so we end up in one of those games, which everybody says nobody wants to end up in the dreaded. It's always the dreaded play-in game. How dreaded, should Heat fans feel? How much should they be dreading this? Because I don't know what the actual numbers are, but it seemed to me that the Heat did very well against the Hawks this year. Is that correct?
Yeah, they did. Actually, if you go back to the playoffs last year, they won 7 of 9 against Atlanta. And it actually goes back a little bit further. They had a weird loss up there last season, where nobody for Atlanta played and they lost the game. But which is what the Heat do. But typically, they control Atlanta, and I don't. I mean, DeJounte Murray had one really big game against them this season, but Trey has been useless against them. Last 9 games against Miami, he's shooting 32% from the floor, 18% from 3. They have a formula against him, which is a lot of Gabe Vincent, who he does not handle particularly well, and then a lot of Jimmy Butler. They'll throw doubles at him. They'll throw traps at him. They have Bam coming at him on switches. Could he have a game against them? Absolutely. But I do think they're in his head. I think actually, I would say if they're in one player's head more than anybody in the entire NBA, it's him.
Wow.
So this went as well as it could have, I guess, to get the 7th seed and to get the home game. I also do think that what we saw yesterday, which was everybody kind of being able to have some fun and relax. And it was perfect. I mean, it really was legitimately perfect. Like the way that everything played out for somebody who everybody in the organization reveres. I think that was good. They have a practice today, which I'm heading down to, and I feel like they can refocus. I don't think they'll lose on Tuesday. I don't. They're 5-point favorites. I think that's it. I would feel differently about Toronto. I would feel differently if they were playing Toronto. You don't want to have to see Toronto if you lose to Atlanta. I don't think that's a good matchup for Miami, but I think they will beat Atlanta, and then then they'll get some time off. Actually, they won't play again until Saturday. So they'll have 3 days to recharge and take that flight to Boston, which they know what it's going to be. Like I'll say, I mean, look, as good as the Celtics are, they know what the Celtics are. They know the matchups they have in favor against the Celtics. They obviously played the Celtics as well as you possibly can last year without beating them. They did beat them a couple of years ago in the playoffs, and I even though I do believe the Celtics roster is better than it was last season, particularly with Brogdon. I think that they at least think they can compete with that team. I'm not going to pick them to beat them, but I do think they can compete with that team if they shoot the ball well.
Well, and you just said the key thing was, and that's really the difference from last year to this year. It's outside of PJ Tucker, it's the same freaking team. Last year they were number 1 in 3-point shooting.
Right.
This year, either last year they just were above the mean, and this year they regressed, or they fell off a cliff, whatever you want to call it. This year they were like bottom 5 in 3, maybe even worse than that.
Yeah.
Look, the Hawk game, I feel like they'll win fine. But again, the Celtics have been top 3 the entire year, and people were giving them championship favorite odds. It doesn't feel like they'll win the series, but what is this season? Like, what do you do with this season, seeing that the team that was one shot away from the finals is in the play-in and deserves to be in the play-in the way they played this season?
I don't think that anything that happens in the playoffs is going to fool them at this point. I feel like they got a handle on their team once it got healthy. And now they kind of know where the shortcomings are, and they know they need to upgrade. The issue is how, because they're going to go into this offseason capped out again, and really pressed up against the luxury tax. Like, it's almost unavoidable this time. Like, Mickey is going to have to pay. Like, there's just, I mean, you have the contracts of you have 4 guys, okay, making premium money, and a 5th in Duncan Robinson, who, if you don't move, is making significant money. So, people talk about, okay, are you going to re-sign Strus and Vincent? Well, that comes down to luxury tax. It doesn't come down to salary cap. I mean, the reality is, if you decide not to sign them, there's nobody you can sign in their place. Like that, you're signing them above the cap, and you will have to replace them with minimum players. I mean, unless you reshuffle the rest of the roster with Lowry, Robinson, etc. So I don't think anything's going to fool them. I think that they know right now that they need to get Jimmy more help. And I really think that that's what kind of has changed this year, is that I don't think they thought that by the end of this year, we'd still be talking about it in the context of Jimmy. This was supposed to be the year that, to a certain degree, Bam and Tyler took the torch. It was happening in the first half of the season, and then it stopped. And we've done a bunch of podcasts about the idea of whether it's a zero-sum game with Bam and Jimmy, that it seems like when Bam has his best moments is when Jimmy takes a step back, and then when Bam's not doing anything, that's when Jimmy starts to press forward, and then it becomes sort of self-fulfilling, where then Jimmy's not getting Bam the ball, and it's just, they're not additive to each other offensively. They are defensively. They're not offensively. And so they're going to have to find, either Tyler's going to have to become it, or they're going to have to find another piece that makes up for that, where one of them is additive with somebody else, and that there are going to be things that are staggered there. I don't think it's personality related. It's just that in the modern NBA, name me one of those teams I just mentioned as I went through the list where their 2 best players are not outside shooters. At least one of them is not an outside shooter. It's not Golden State. It's not the Clippers. I mean, obviously, both Kawhi and Paul George, can stretch the floor. It's not Phoenix for sure. Okay, Durant and Booker. Okay, it's not. So I mean, Milwaukee. I mean, okay, Giannis, but you've got Middleton, right? So you don't have this kind of scenario either. And obviously, Brown and Tatum, both can play on all 3 levels. So I just think that they're going to have to figure out, okay, is Tyler that guy that makes each of them better individually, or are we going to have to go find somebody else who can do that? And then what role players do we surround with? I think they have come to the best possible rotation they can have for this season. I like moving Strus to the lineup. gives them some spacing. He's shot the ball 41% from three over the last 6 weeks. So he has begun to pick up his game a little bit. And I like having Lowry and Love off the bench because they're stabilizing players, and you're not asking him to do too much now. And Martin off the bench can do a little bit of everything. So he's had a very good year. So I feel like they found the best possible rotation. Getting Oladipo out of it had to be done, regardless of his scoring when nobody else plays. But I think they're probably a 5 or 6 game out against Boston. And I think when that happens, they'll try to move Kyle, they'll try to move Duncan, they'll try to reset. But what they really need is they need something like what kind of sort of happened yesterday, which is somebody like Dame Lillard to say, I'm done where I'm at. Now the next step is I want to play in Miami. And I've said that to you guys all year. That's ultimately what needs to happen. And then it's up to them to figure out how to make it work to get the guy.
Doesn't sound overwhelmingly promising. All I can do is picture, Cody Zeller on one of my big white stiff teams, and he was going to be. It looks like you're seeing the 40 and over league at the Poznak Jewish Center, but when he comes in a game, especially with the mask. What decade, Scoop? Just one last thing on the Heat. In what decade did the Heat next possess a draft pick? Do we know?
No, they have one this year.
Oh,
they do. They got that tricky little thing called the Stepien rule, which I'm sure you're familiar with, which is where you can't trade your picks in consecutive years. But they do have a pick this year, and I this is a good draft actually. It's a pretty deep draft. I don't really start following college basketball till the tournament. I don't think Eric Spoelstra watches a college basketball game till the tournament. But from talking to some of their scouts, they like the draft and they think they can get a player similar to a Tyler Hero type player somewhere in the teens. Now, will they keep the pick? We'll see. They have got limited assets. You can take the pick and trade it for someone else. They have a little more flexibility because of the trade they made with OKC. 2 trade picks. And they also have Jovic from last year, who they like. And I know people don't think so because they basically shelved him the last 2 months of the season. But they do like him. But he's also a possible movable player for them in a trade. So they'll look, I think they need to add the athleticism to the roster in general. I think athleticism and shooting, everybody's going to talk about size. You can find functional size in the NBA for what fits. Like you're joking about Zeller, he's been fine. It's just they need athletes, I think. I think that's what's missing. Other than Bam and Caleb, they don't really have pure athletes on this team. And I think ultimately it just makes the game easier. They'd be better in transition. It's a little bit more a modern NBA type thing. I think they'll find one of those. There's a couple, as usual, there's a couple kids in Kentucky they like. And to me, if that's worked, go for it.
Yeah, sure.
Because when they haven't done it, they've passed on guys like Maxey and Quickly.
Let's not forget Devin Booker. Yeah.
Most favored Booker, yes.
Yeah.
Right. They've been producing the best guards in the league now for the past 5-6 years. So why not just stick to it?
All right, a couple of things quickly, Scoop. We appreciate your time as always. But as we get into the playoffs, naturally, I've been following the New York Knicks in some detail through my subscription to the New York Post and the Nets as well. And that's kind of remarkable. Jacques Vaughn, gets to the postseason and it doesn't have to worry about a play-in game after they completely dismantled and remade their team. They continue to have a modicum of success or a reasonable amount of success and stayed ahead of the Heat in that situation. The Cavs and the Knicks, there's a lot of optimism surrounding the Knicks and the fact that they were the 5th seed. Are they in for a pile of trouble and a rude awakening against the Cavaliers in that series, in your opinion?
It's going to be a fun series, actually. I think the teams are reasonably evenly matched. I think in a year – we won't be saying that because I think the Cavs are on a definite upward trajectory. I just don't know if they're ready. And that's the thing. Mobley's terrific, but he's not in his final form yet. Mitchell obviously has had tremendous moments in the playoffs. He hasn't really been responsible for Utah's failures. I think we're seeing now who was responsible for Utah's failures all those years. The guy who may or may not play in the play-in game for Minnesota. Coming up and Gobert. I think that like I said, in a year, I think Cleveland's going to be more of a force than they are now. To me, the Knicks comes down to one thing: which Julius Randle are they getting? Are they getting the guy who this year emerged again as an All NBA type, maybe 3rd team type player, or are they getting the guy who was a complete disaster in the playoffs? The last time he was in there. So we'll see. We'll see if he's developed the counters, and also R.J. Barrett can be very, very up and down. Brunson is great, and Brunson's going to be great. And look, that was a steal. I mean, if you just look at what they and it's as I was surprised. I'm surprised honestly, but it's a great contract. It's a descending contract. He's going to be really good. JB Bickerstaff hasn't been in these kind of playoff series. Tibbs has. I think that's an advantage for New York. I'm going to pick Cleveland. But I think it's a 7-game series. I'm kind of contradicting myself from the beginning of our conversation here. But the first round series are going to be fun, actually. Because of the parity. It's kind of when you go forward. But I mean, you're looking at the Knicks Cleveland series is really good, and then out west, you're looking at potential Memphis Lakers in the first round. You're looking at Clippers Phoenix. I mean, if Paul George can even make it back for the second half of that series, then that one becomes interesting. I don't know who's coming out of the 8 necessarily against Denver, but then the Sacramento Golden State series, again, everybody's picking the Warriors. Everybody's picking a team that won 9 games on the road in the regular season. So to go win a series where they're starting on the road, even though I do think they'll win it, and then you go past that, you're potentially looking at Memphis Golden State in the second round, which, Dylan Brooks and Klay Thompson, everybody wants to see that right now.
Great.
So there is some stuff going on, but I'm gonna take Cleveland. But I think it's going to be a very, very competitive series. I think if there is one advantage is the fact that Tibbs has been in these situations before. I think that will help them.
Scoop, always great, man. Brilliant.
For the man.
No wonder 5 Reasons rises right to the top of all media outlets. Under your auspices here. Fantastic job, as always, Ethan. And we thank you so much. I hope you had a great Easter with your daughter. Was that a little egg hunt in play there? Or?
No, we did a little breakfast, but then you do what? They're playing these games at 1:00 on Sundays on Easter. So now I was down there. I Easter egg hunted with UD. So that was
a quick thought on UD and his career. I mean, the last 10 years he essentially has been we were saying a DNP CD, but it obviously meant a lot to the organization and still does.
Yeah, the thing I said about UD consistently is this. Covered thousands of athletes over the past 25 years. There's one athlete who was with the team for any length of time, not 20 years, obviously, but any length of time, who I never heard another teammate say anything negative about.
Wow.
Ever. And to me, that is the great tribute to him. To be respected by your colleagues to that degree. And I think what you saw yesterday was why he's earned that respect. If you can't do anything anymore, if you can't play, if you can't push guys in practice, then it's just a bunch of stories, right? It's just a bunch of what you did against Dirk and all. And that is why, and I think what we saw yesterday is why he insisted on continuing as a player instead of going to be a coach. Because it is different when you're telling other guys what they should be doing, when they're seeing you put in the work and do it in practice, than when you're an assistant. I think we saw it yesterday. Look, and the other thing I think we saw was everybody makes fun of this NBA player or that NBA player, and every NBA player will go get you 100 points at the JCC. Okay? That's, you know what I'm saying? I think we underestimate sometimes the level. It's not just that UD made some jump shots. He literally got up on an alley-oop on the break.
That was great.
It's a perfect way to end, and to have Dwayne there too, and interacting with the crowd. And I'm just going to say this one time, and I don't know who's watching it. Okay, get him back in the organization. It is.
It doesn't want anything to do with the Jazz. He's been here like all year. Every time that he'd had a big moment, it's just being Wade interjected in, which is great.
Same with like DJ Khaled, coach side.
With that,
he wants to be here, and I understand it's business. I get it. I understand he may have wanted a deal that was not a reasonable deal in terms of. But to me, and it's not my money, and I understand everything that's gone on with Carnival and everything else. But I'm just saying, find a way to get him back in the organization. I'm sorry. I watched him for literally 20 minutes after the game, interacting with fans. He is a unique superstar who is absolutely the most, I know we talk Dan and everything, and I get it. Dwayne Wade for this generation is the guy, okay? And I just do not understand how he's in Utah. I just don't. Everybody's explained the business part of it to me. I just find a way to get him here. He wants to be here.
Yes.
The man wants to be here. It's just ridiculous.
Well, I mean, Dwayne Wade, Gabrielle Union. I mean, you think of stardom, you think of Miami. You're not thinking of. I mean, what is this? The freaking Osmond family? That he's having to dial into there. Utah. There's nothing going on there. Nothing that matches the sort of vibe that these people give off. So yeah, it'd be great to get them back. Excellent job, Scoop, as always. Looking forward to the playoffs. I hope we can get you on throughout the playoff season here, because it's always fun to discuss basketball or anything with you for that matter. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate. Follow the Defo Show on the 5 Reasons YouTube channel.
There it is. It's a whole new thing. It's great.
We got Defo on 5.
Defo on 5. We got all kinds of stuff.
Thing. We're all over the place. Look at you.
It's all good, man. No, I enjoy it. Scoop has done a great job. It's a nice platform,
Yes.
5 Reasons Sports Network. And wow, I mean, could you have any more thorough knowledge of what was going on with, not just the Miami Heat, but his overall, knowledge of the league is exceptional, is it not? I mean, I don't know that he's picking winners if he was gambling on these games, but, I would tend to trust Scoop's opinion about a lot of things, no? And the detail that he goes into with some of this stuff, including like contractual things and things of that nature. But the tanking thing is despicable, and the way to correct it, it's just like one thing. I mean, what's the most obvious thing about all these gun debates is that nobody needs like a machine gun to protect their family and or go hunting with, right? So if you want to at least start somewhere, just eliminate these assault weapons. What do we need them for? Do you need an assault weapon, Lubie?
No.
I don't think so, right? Where you're just thinking, hey, let me go take my machine gun out and blow a few holes in the fence just for sport.
It's not exactly for sport. It's not for protection, and it's not for hunting. So
It's
the
nuts.
two reasons why people supposedly need guns are hunting, protection. Yes, sport is a thing, but the NRA isn't this big of a thing because of the sport aspect. Most people that use guns for sport are logical people. The people who we see who are over the edge are the people it's for protection. It's not, because the stuff you have to do to keep an AK safe for your family, there's no way you could get it and use it for
Who the hell wants one? I mean, really? I mean, except some nutbag that's going to go and shoot up a church or a school or some public scene. It's insane. So that would be the first step, right? I mean, and the first step in just changing all of this nonsense about tanking in sports would be to stop rewarding futility. And Lubie, believe me, I was like a lot of people. When Kaplan ran that by me the first time, I thought, what are you, crazy? You're going to give the best teams a chance to get the best players. But there are other ways to eliminate the desire or the benefit of not winning. And that is, like, don't make the incentive for teams that turn things around. I mean, for teams that get better, or teams that have you have to reward the people that are out there trying to win, not the people that are out there trying to lose. It's as simple as that, right?
100%. We've talked a lot about it. I don't know. The playing thing has stemmed the tide a bit. And until there was a Wemby who literally might be as good, if not a better prospect than LeBron, you haven't heard the tanking the last 2-3 years. But then again, a Wemby comes around, and here you go. You have teams. Rockets clearly tanking. The Pistons clearly tanking. The Magic by the end of the season.
How do you tell your fan base that you have Luka Doncic and you traded for Kyrie Irving and traded a lot, as Scoop mentioned, for Kyrie Irving, and that you have no desire to be in the playoffs because it might jeopardize the chance that you would have to give up a pick that was somewhere between 1 and 10 to the New York Knicks in a deal that you made several years ago? I mean, it's insane to think that that's going to have some impact on the game. And that, the other issue, obviously, that most leagues really don't care about, it seems, is, people paid money to see certain players out there on the court. And, in many cases, they planned, a lot of different things that they had to work with in terms of their itinerary, maybe even coming from out of town to see certain games. And then, it's one thing a guy's injured, that's arbitrary bad luck. But, to just say, hey, we're not playing anybody that you've ever heard of before is ugliness. There's no doubt. I mean, it's a total fraud and misrepresentation of what you're selling people when they're buying tickets to a game. Although, there are no guarantees. A lot of disclaimers on the back of a sports and concert ticket, are there not, Mike Lubie? You ever read the fine print on the back of the ticket?
Oh, thank God.
We're under no obligation to play this game. All right, that was Scoop Skolnick. Let me tell you about what's going on. Jimmy Johnson's Big Chill, man. It's rocking down there, and a great time of the year. I mean, at this transitional period here from spring and before we hit the red, just scorching hot days of summer. And that would be a good place to chill out in the summertime too, because for some reason, right, the Keys, you can take the heat there. Where it's oppressive here. You're walking around in a business suit. You put a t-shirt on and a pair of cutoff shorts and some flip flops, and you're sitting there sipping a cocktail under the tiki bar at Jimmy Johnson's Big Chill, having something great to eat, hanging out by the pool there, and looking out on the bay. And having a great time, enjoying the water sports and all the other things that happen at Jimmy Johnson's Big Chill, and you're thinking, wow, I mean, this is great. What a way to beat the heat of the summertime. But right now, it's just a beautiful time of the year to get down to Key Largo. Mile marker 104, the Overseas Highway in Key Largo, Jimmy Johnson's Big Chill. I was overwhelmingly impressed in our visit there. The accommodations were, I mean, literally as fine as any. I mean, one time, a friend of mine, comped me a room at the Rio, and it was like the Michael Jackson suite. And outside of the fact that there were a bunch of little kids in the closet, if you get a joke in there, no. I mean, the room is as palatial as any that I've ever stayed in, and then that was eclipsed like a dozen times over by the accommodations at Jimmy Johnson's Big Chill. I mean, and it's great if you're sharing a trip down there with another family or something. Plenty of room. So look that up at jimmyjohnsonsbigchill.com. It's limited, the accommodations there, but if you're staying somewhere else at Key Largo or just passing through, food and drink and the atmosphere there are just unparalleled, second to none. Got the basketball playoffs. You can watch that in the sports bar there while you're sipping your favorite cocktails, having some of those great, I mean, what would you call them, Matt? They're sort of designer pizzas, but, I don't want to put them in that category because it's still got that whole Keys vibe. So you're going to love it. Jimmy Johnson's Big Chill. It's mile marker 104, Overseas Highway in Key Largo. There are a lot of places that you could stop and have something great to eat or drink in the Keys. I always love the quaintness of a lot of these places, but I don't think anything really rivals Jimmy Johnson's Big Chill. So check it out. If you haven't been there, make it the first time, the next time you're down there, whether you're coming or going to Key Largo, Jimmy Johnson's Big Chill at mile marker 104 on the Overseas Highway. All right, we're coming back with more. We'll wrap up this edition of A Peel Yourself Off the Mat Monday, but many other things that happened in the world of sport. It was great. The Masters, fantastic. Tiger Woods, does he come back again after that? Boy, did he look like a shot fighter in the continuation of that third round. My God, Lubie. You felt for the man. You really did. Because he looked as crippled up and, just unable to contend with the conditions as you could possibly get. I don't know. Should we applaud him for getting out there in the first place? What do you think? Does he need to do this, Lubie?
We've talked about how I feel about guys near the end. It's sad to me to see the guy holding on too long. I was never a Tiger fan, so I don't really give it all what he's. I don't care what he's doing. He can do what he wants, but he looks like he was a shell of himself. Now he looks like a shell of himself.
A shout out to our good friend Joe Casale. His Quinnipiac. What is the nickname of the Quinnipiac team?
Oh, I have no idea.
Known more for their surveys, their political surveys, than they are for virtually anything else. They've had representative baseball teams at times. Joe was I think he was the like original SID when they first put an SID, Sports Information Director, on the scene. And, was there for the launch of the hockey program, which won the national championship.
Oh, wow.
In a brilliant comeback over Minnesota, who had the game literally in the bag. They've never lost when they had a third period lead. I don't think. I think they were like, some ridiculous number, like 30-0 in that situation. And they were up 2-0. They got tied in regulation and lost in overtime to Quinnipiac, their first national championship in any sport. How about that? And Joe was talking about how he was on edge. I mean, he was all excited about this because he has these deep roots to Quinnipiac. And, the fabled athletic director there who gave him a shot. That got him into the sports business. So, nice little finish to the story there. That they came back in the most dramatic of fashions and won the thing. And the Marlins, of course, winners over the Mets yesterday. Now what? Are they 4-6, Louie? 4-6 on the season. Arise is a legitimate hitter, at least so far, through the first 10 games. He's hitting like 467. We've seen some power. De La Cruz came through with, not a guy that you thought much of going into the season. He was an okay player, like a lot of the guys on the Marlins roster. But has a big ball game, and they're 5 for 5 in stolen bases. Jazz Chisholm with a Willie Mays-like catch in center field. It looked like Swoboda, didn't he? He was like sort of diving, and I think he had his glove up, which is a hard way to catch the ball when you're diving forward, and makes a catch. So he looked good, and their anemic batting order producing enough runs to at least scratch out one win over the weekend against the New York Mets. So we'll see where they go from here. 4-6 to open up the season. A nice fat 400 ball club, as and maybe that's where they are for the rest of the year, right? 400 out of 162 games. If you won 4 out of 10 is 16 times 4. Yeah, that's about right. 65, 66 games. That would be a pathetic season. All right. We'll come back and say goodbye in a moment. Now that.
The time.
The Mayo Lunchbox goes today also. Mayo was doing some meeting over the weekend, was he not?
Yes, he was.
I think we can say that without qualification. I mean, that's kind of, you talk about a vague statement there. Mayo was doing some meeting over the weekend. I'm talking about dining out, though. It's 8:58.
Folks, Tony Segreto here. Let me ask you a question. What do you look for when you go out to eat? Good food, obviously, friendly atmosphere, not too loud, but good energy, reasonable prices, and a place where you feel comfortable. All those ingredients, no pun meant there, are hard to find unless you're talking about the Texas Roadhouse. You see, they encompass all of those attributes. Really, really good food, amazing atmosphere, good for a family, good for a date, or just a night out for yourself, and prices that will make you extremely happy. Their ribs unmatched. Steaks hand cut every day. Everything, and I mean everything, is made on site, including their incredible bread. It's the one day, folks, that you can forget about low-carb diets. Trust me when I tell you, Texas Roadhouse, your restaurant, your destination when you say, where should we go and eat tonight?
From the newly renovated sports bar to the beautiful bayside views captured at the Tiki Bar, Jimmy Johnson's Big Chill has it all. Located at mile marker 104, the Big Chill also offers waterfront dining while experiencing breathtaking sunset views of the Florida Keys. It's simply the hottest spot in the Keys to cool off. That's Jimmy Johnson's Big Chill at mile marker 104 in Key Largo. For more information, call today at 305-453-9066.
The Big Show, ladies and gentlemen, and best use of the foreign object. It's my favorite piece of equipment, the foreign object. What was the best use of it you've ever seen, Big Show?
The best use, I have a couple all-time favorites. I used to love the Muda mist to the face, that green mist.
Oh, Kevin Sullivan?
Kevin Sullivan used it, but it started by the great Muda.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but Kevin Sullivan, yes, would use that because, Kevin Sullivan would steal anything from anyone. Yeah.
Once he went over to the dark side.
Well, yeah, once he was in the dark side,
were you ever tempted to go dark side?
Me, I've had more turns than NASCAR. Are you kidding me?
Have you ever at dinner started a conversation by saying, McMahon?
Oh my God!
Just out of habit.
Oh yeah. For a while, we'd say our prayer before we ate our food was, "Thank you, Lord Vince, for this beautiful bounty for which we're about to receive."
Buenos dias. The cafecito is piping hot. Why not enjoy it with Defo and Lubie? It's now time for the Defo Show.
A very candid Big Show during that interview. I like that he got into the best use of the foreign object. The Muda mist. What was, I thought it originated with Kevin Sullivan, that silly string that they used to, go ahead and spray in people's faces. That was great. As if the guy had actually gone to the dark side. And interesting to know that the Big Show had considered a trip to the dark side, saying he had more turns than NASCAR, and that he had actually thought about, just opening up, a dinner conversation with McMahon. Gotta love professional wrestlers, man. They just made a big deal with the UFC, right? The UFC bought the WWE for $21 billion. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Unbelievable. All right. Lubie, you got to run? We're out of here, right?
Yes, we're done.
That's it? Okay. Very good, sir.
I don't have to go, but we're just done.
Oh, okay. I thought...
you want to go? It's after 9.
I was going to bet on Koepka at 30-1. I considered it for a second. It wasn't something that... and I would have used him in the pool, which was one at 36 under the Masters pool. Somebody took down 6 times for winning the Masters pool, which you would have had to have had. Rahm was an easy one, right? So he's 12 under, so there's 12 strokes. You could have considered Mayo had Spieth in his exacta, and he finished 7 under, so that would have been negative 19 for 2 players, and you would have had 5 more. You still had to have some guys. I mean, you had to come up with a pretty good formula there. Nobody in their right mind could have picked Phil, right, except to say horses for courses, that he plays Augusta National well, but he woke up from the grave to, nobody could have anticipated that, correct, Lubie? If you had Phil in the top 5, you deserve to make any amount of money that you cashed on that tournament. Victor Hovland, we've used him before, but he disappointed us. So do you find that you have a very negative reaction, like an overreaction to losing a bet? Like a team loses for you, and then you will never play them again. That's kind of how I felt about Victor Hovland. I would not have expected the Live Tour guys to do as well. Right? I mean, you scab Live Tour scumbag. Well, really, I mean, even though I had no monetary interest in it, except that I didn't want Koepka to win because I didn't bet him.
Yeah, exactly.
Would it have been an interesting story? Yes, of course it would. I think, Koepka just comes off as sort of an abrasive, personality that really doesn't like anybody. Even though, he's sort of okay in interviews, but, at least say something. But we know he hates everybody else that's out there on the course, correct? That he just as soon see him die. But the $100 million, I think, really tempered him. We were talking about this earlier, where, I mean, he's sitting down with Jon Rahm as he's in the middle of this very contentious final round of the tournament. He had been leading almost the entire way and was in full command and even had a 2-shot lead going to the final round, Brooks Koepka. And then, falls apart. His driver took everything to the left, Lubie. It was like 4. Everything he hit was like the dead center trees, which is a disaster there for the most part at Augusta National. And, and then they're like sitting. They had to wait because of the way things were stacked up a little bit because, all the delays with the weather, and they had to play the 2 rounds there essentially on Sunday. And he's shooting a breeze with Jon Rahm like, it was me and you talking on the show. Hey, Lubie, how you doing? How was your weekend? This was a guy that would have just as soon stuck a knife in Rahm's back in the past. So maybe the $100 million helped ease the pain or whatever. And now he's come back to playing for him. So could be a factor in upcoming major events. The PGA, Jim Sarney informs us, is the next major.
Yeah, it's in May.
Okay, that's coming up in May. And I would imagine, well, the PGA won't allow these Live Tour players anywhere near there. No, they're
PGA Tour.
Absolutely taboo, yeah. All right, so that won't be a factor there. It will be, I believe, in a U.S. and a British Open, now known as just the Open, with their pretentiousness over there in Great Britain, that they are the only country in the world. So that was interesting because they did fare very well. So Greg Norman, it was a good day for him, even though he was banned from the course. How about that?
Exactly.
He must have felt like Martha Burke out there, just screaming in the wind at first, and then all of his guys made a pretty good account of themselves. All right, we'll see you at 12 o'clock today. Mike Mayo's Lunchbox, that's coming up at noon with Mike Mayo, the Gambling Gourmet, and also the man behind Let's Eat South Florida's 102,000, subscriber following, which is pretty amazing. So we'll have some food talk coming up at 12 o'clock here on South Florida Live as we leave you now that.
The time.
And I think Mayo had a good week gambling. He was on fire, man. And of course, had the ribs there with Nicky Mohan at Christine Lee's. He loves that joint. It's 9:05.
Let's go to eat a damn snack. Look what they done to my show.